Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and we're happy to have David Ferriman on today. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming, David.
Glad to be here.
You know, David is one of our quality guests. We always strive to bring the most interesting people with their stories. And I know that anyone who listens to this podcast will certainly enjoy it. And to show us that you do, we would really appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And subscribe if you're not subscribed. I mean, why the hell not? We're so cool. This is a cool group of guys who wouldn't want to subscribe. And we would greatly appreciate it. We appreciate all of you who are listening. And we especially appreciate David Ferriman for coming on.
Yeah. And so I first heard of David. I interviewed Evan Sharley, and she mentioned a project that was done by David. And I was intrigued by the way he did it, because it wasn't like my first AI sort of podcast, but it was definitely one that I was interested in, right? And so I thought, let's get David on the show, but it's taken a little while. Go back and see the Evan Sharley interview. David, tell us a little bit about where you were born, what part of the country, and what life was like as a young little David running around the neighborhood.
So I grew up originally, when I was very little, in Grove City, Ohio, a suburb of Columbus. That's where my parents joined the LDS Church, the Utah branch of Mormonism. I will tell you, I was an atheist as a kid. I was very upset that my parents joined a church, because back then you went to church in the morning, you went home for lunch, and then you went back to church, which meant I missed the ice cream truck. And there's no way that a righteous and good God would let me miss the ice cream truck. So I just did not believe.
So you were a dessert-driven atheist, I think.
Definitely. I definitely was. But through some spiritual experiences, I taught myself to read so that I could read the Book of Mormon, the Bible, so I could prove to my parents that all this was just nonsense. But instead, I gained a testimony that completely controlled, if you will, the course of my life. So
you were how old when you started to read the scriptures?
About 5 or 6.
Wow.
So I taught, like I said, I had to teach myself how to read, because I don't think I was in kindergarten yet, or I just begun kindergarten. And of course, you don't start off with Shakespeare in kindergarten. So I just, my mom bought those old books, like the Little House on the Prairie type readers that they used in back then. And I started with those, and I would just kind of go to the scriptures, and I realized it wasn't exactly the same language. And I would just ask my parents if I had questions on the bigger words. And eventually they got me those old, like, I don't know, graphic novels, if you will. They're like comic books with the tapes. You remember those?
Mm-hmm.
And so that sped up the process a bit. I was able to figure out words, and I was able to take that and transition from those youth readers, I guess, into the actual scriptures themselves.
So you didn't start off with I Can Read It Myself, Dr. Seuss books?
I mean, I had those books.
Okay.
I did eventually read things like that because they were rhyming and fun. My grandmother read those to me as a kid.
Okay.
But so, I mean, it's not like the only thing I had access to was the Bible and the Book of Mormon. That's just what I used, because I was dead set on getting to that ice cream truck, man. I wanted that ice cream. I was a kid on a mission. It just didn't work out that way.
Were you somebody that looked at adults all the time and wanted to be big? I want to be big, just like the movie Big. Did you watch them drive and watch them do things and learn how
not
to
exactly
pay for things?
I really enjoyed being a kid. I did not like the fact that my dad was in the military, he was in college, and he worked. And so I was like, well, adulthood's got to be terrible.
Right.
Especially as a guy. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. But I just assumed that, being a male, when I grew up, I was going to have to join the military, work, and go to school and never see my family.
So you want to have fun while it lasted?
Yes, that was kind of my mindset. And so when the idea of going to school and then going to church and all these things monopolizing my time, I was like, oh, my childhood is over, was kind of my mindset at the time, which now is obviously very ridiculous. But when you're a little kid, it is what it is.
And yet you chose to read the Bible as a kid at the same time. So that's kind of, it's an interesting sort of dichotomy.
Yes.
Right. And
I got to
so,
study the Bible so I get my childhood back.
did you do scouts or any sports as a youth?
I started in Cub Scouts when we were in Grove City. When I was in the 4th grade, we moved to a farm in London, Ohio, which is basically the middle of nowhere, kind of between Springfield and Columbus. And so there was no Cub Scouts out there, but being a member of the LDS Church, once I got the age to be a Boy Scout, of course, I was put into that program.
Okay. What kind of farm? What was the farm like?
It was like a family farm. It was a goat farm mostly. We raised crops for us. We bought goats and sheep, and we had all kinds of different types of chickens, ducks, muscovies, geese, that kind of thing. And we would trade and sell them.
What is a Muscovy? I've never heard that term.
The way it was described to me growing up was that it is a cross between a goose and a duck. But if I remember correctly, I looked that up a couple of years ago and someone asked, and that's not entirely true. I think it's a very large duck from somewhere else. They have very big eggs, but not the size of goose eggs, and they're delicious, but their meat isn't as oily as I guess a standard duck would be. We had a thing every fall and every spring. We would fill our freezer full of goat, sheep, duck, goose, chicken meat. So we were somewhat self-sustaining like that.
And she'd open the freezer. She'd open the freezer and she'd say, duck, duck, goose.
Well, actually, because they were all our pets, she'd open the freezer and be like, all right, this one's Steve. and that's what we
John and Sally.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what were you like in high school? What was high school like for you? And did you do early morning seminary?
I did do early morning seminary. I was the class president all 4 years because no one else wanted to be the class president. I did not enjoy getting up early. My major, if you will, in high school was art. I not only took all of the art classes, I actually rounded up students to create new classes when I started running out of classes for my senior year. So I was up late. Can you
give me an example of a class that you sort of rounded up kids for?
So there was, oh man, it's been so long. There was a art class. I believe it was a painting class, and it was like painting 2, and then there was ceramics 2. And it was only myself and one other student that wanted it. And so they were like, it's not going to happen.
So they're going to cancel it.
Yeah. So like basically it was one that they didn't always have. They normally didn't have it. And I was like, well, we need some classes. My senior year, also a friend of mine and I helped put together a photography lab in the school so that the year after I graduated, they were able to have a photography class.
Well, that almost could have been a Eagle Scout project.
I was kicked out of Boy Scouts. My parents got divorced, and for whatever reason, they decided really to focus on the kids with dads in the home. And so the 3 or 4 of us that didn't have fathers, I was kicked out for having a pocket knife. And they decided to strip me of all of my merit badges to start over because it would have been easier since the kids that were older had graduated and the kids were younger were coming in blank. They wanted me to start over blank. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So they kicked me out for having a pocket knife without having the badge or whatever, even though I did. So I went to a garage sale because you're right. That is actually one of the reasons why I did it. I went to a garage sale and I bought all the books I needed so I could just do the Boy Scout stuff myself. That was, in my mind, my Eagle project, but I am not officially an Eagle Scout.
I can't imagine that you'd be kicked out for having when I was a Scout, we needed to carry a pocket knife.
Yeah.
You needed the Whitland shit.
Yeah,
Whitland
that's
shit.
Right.
So my mom was married to my dad and then they divorced. And so in that little interim, I was not permitted to be in Scouts, but by the time she got remarried and they invited me back in, I was like, yeah, I don't really want anything to do with this. I don't mean to slight the LDS Church. I'm sure it may have just been my stake or my ward, but at the end of the day, the LDS Church is set up for families that would have one mother, one father, and however many kids. And if you don't fit that perfect frame, they don't really know what to do with you.
That's right.
So,
and then there's leadership roulette where
yes, there's that too.
The leaders aren't trained to learn how to deal with all the different situations.
Yeah. And none of the, well, I take it back. The first scoutmaster I had when I first joined, he was very, very good. But after that, I mean, it's really just a calling. So it's really hard, I think, in their church for them to find someone. And not they don't do scouts anymore, but you don't want to keep someone in a calling for too long. But at the same time, if there's only one guy in your ward that actually cares about scouts, then until that guy rotates back in, those scouts just have whoever they have.
That's right.
Is what it is.
They hope the scouting fire gets lit under them, but it doesn't always happen.
Yes.
Wow. And so did you do college right after high school, or what was in store for you?
My plan was to graduate high school and go on a mission. And this brother in my ward pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I want you to go home and I want you to pray about this and get a testimony from the Lord, from the Holy Spirit, that you're supposed to go on a mission. So that way, when somebody asks you, if you're there because it's just something you have to do because you're Mormon or because God sent you, you can say that God sent you." And I was like, "Oh, what a great idea." So I went home, I got down on my knees and prayed about it. And the Lord said, "No." And I was like, "Oh, whoa, what do you mean no?" And so I prayed on it again. And the Lord said, "I have something else for you to do." And I was like, "Okay." So after I graduated high school, I kept praying, like, "What do you want me to do? I'm not set up to go to college. I'm not going on a mission. I'm working at Wendy's. What do you want me to do?" And basically what the Lord told me was that he wanted me to go out and explore other churches. And so I went to like the Catholic Church. I went to a number of different Protestant churches that were around me. I checked out like a Hindu temple in Columbus or Buddhist temple. And I studied even when I got back into the LDS Church, I studied comparative religion instead, which actually helped me quite a bit to understand my own religion in a deeper perspective.
So you say that you got back to the church. So did you actually leave the church?
When I let them know I wasn't going on a mission, there was a lot of pressure. They really wanted me to go because I was going to be the first person in this new branch to go on a mission. And I kept telling them, "Well, the Lord told me no." And they're like, "Well, we don't care. You're supposed to go. Yeah. Prophet says go, so go." And so I didn't like leave the church. I was just like, I'm really uncomfortable with this. So I just told them, "Hey, can you put me on the schedule on Sundays?" And then I just told them, "Hey, look, I'd love to be there, but I got to work. And, it is what it is."
Right.
And
so then you paused.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I paused. And then I started dating this girl who was very anti-Mormon, and she was convinced. She was like, I'm gonna break you of this. And I was like, "Oh, I don't care." And in the end, she ended up getting baptized LDS, and I got reactivated in that church.
But you didn't marry her?
I actually did. That was my first wife.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
all right. How old were you when you got married?
I do not remember. I was in my early 20s.
Early 20s.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who I know what things are based on what grade I was in or where I was working.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I understand that. So, but you didn't think that your calling was Wendy's. That's weird to me because I really like Frosties. At Wendy's.
Yes. No, I did not think my calling was Wendy's. The reason why I liked working at Wendy's was because I was still trying to figure out what I was supposed to do. It gave me the money I needed to just, live my life. Back then, I wanted to be a rock star, to be perfectly blunt. And so, I was able to meet other people who wanted to jam and rock out.
And what was your instrument?
I sang and played guitar. I started off as a drummer, then I played bass, then I sang, then I learned guitar so I could help write the music. Then I became a guitarist and singer, and then I ended up just kind of doing all of it.
So you were your own band.
By the
one-man band.
Yeah. Well, basically what I try to do is when you're living in the middle of nowhere, it's hard to find people who don't want to do country music. And so I kind of just slid in wherever I needed to be. But I liked writing the music. I liked writing lyrics and writing songs. I eventually met this bassist, amazing bassist, and he and I wrote some really good stuff together. But it just never really went anywhere. By the time it started kind of doing anything, I ended up, I was married to my second wife. We were having kids, and I was like, I need to do something else. And that's when I went back to college.
So was your interest was country music? Were you?
Oh, no. My interest was not country music. That was the problem.
Okay. Not. So country was big. And what was second? Polka?
Well, I mean, this is back in the 90s, so alternative and
Polka.
industrial.
Okay.
I'm not sure about polka, but
That's maybe more towards Chicago.
yeah. So most of the bands I was in was somewhere between heavy alternative and industrial.
Okay.
So,
What were your influences?
Skinny Puppy, Nine Inch Nails, Nirvana, Front 242. But then the other people, like the bassist I talk about, Tool was one. And he was a lot like the bassist from Tool. But he loved more 80s rock like Kiss. That was his influence. And I tried to find people who were into rock music, but weren't into exactly what I was into, so that whatever music we made didn't just sound like somebody else. So
Yeah.
You want to have your own touch to it.
yeah, my dream was to have a heavy metal drummer, a jazz bassist, a blues lead guitarist, a rhythm guitarist, and then I wanted to sing. That was like my dream band that unfortunately never happened. It did happen for one jam session, but it never happened officially as a band.
So in the jam session, you probably felt like you were in heaven.
I did. It was amazing. And the funny thing was that the drummer was actually a drummer in a blues band. And so he was so happy to be he was into metal. And so he was so happy to actually be able to play like the metal style drums, which he normally didn't get to do. But he wasn't interested in being a part of the band.
The movie version of Heaven, where you're playing a harp all the time, wasn't all that attractive. The harp is beautiful,
Yeah.
but certainly what you experienced probably was way better than just the harp.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Well, a harp is one of those instruments that, if you play it for 200 or 300 years, you start to get tired of it. But eternity is just a living hell, from what I understand.
I wonder if that's why they say don't harp on that, because that was like
Right?
the final instrument.
Yep.
So anyhow, and then did you go back to college eventually?
Yeah, I eventually went back and got a degree in basically e-marketing.
Okay.
So.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's certainly a high demand for that always.
Yeah, that's actually what I
Always.
do now. I work for a marketing firm. So I'm a
Okay.
digital strategist. Okay. So
Does the math work? Yeah.
You probably want to cut this out, but I in my career, what I've always actually been as a strategist. So I'm in digital marketing now, but before that, I was the chief marketing officer for a company, and before that, I was a chief marketing officer for another company that had 3 different divisions, and I oversaw the marketing for all of that. Before that, I led a nonprofit organization where I did a lot of work in Washington D.C. I did that for about a decade, and before that, I worked in a call center. So my real career, regardless of what my degree is, has always just been a strategist and manager.
Right. So, and just, I mean, whether we keep it in or not doesn't matter, because this is interesting to me. But because a strategist decides, like, you have a marketing budget and how much do you want to do in TV, radio, billboards, internet, right? So
Right.
So you have to, and what are your,
So
what
when
are
I
the
say a
metrics?
strategist, when I worked for the call center, I created strategies for employment, retention, and strategies on how to collect first and third party, like how to do it better. And then also management strategies, how to train managers, how to turn people into managers. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're good at managing people. So I would train people to see if they had the potential. So it was more business strategy. When I led the nonprofit, it was strategy as far as how do we engage the public, but a lot of it was how do we engage the public to increase our chances as we're talking to politicians on the Hill. So there was no e-marketing there. It was more conversational type strategy. So we came up with, for example, there was a bill that we didn't want passed that was going to pass as soon as Congress got back in session. So I came up with a strategy that basically paused the bill. It did not pass for 2.5 years. And there were a ton of concessions that were made. So we ended up winning through concessions when it finally did pass.
Compromise is the
yeah.
key word on the Hill, right?
Yeah. So the digital strategy is stuff I got into more in my more recent career. So
Did you work any in programmatic advertising?
no. No, my strategies are more psychological as far as when we're putting together a website, who is your target audience you're trying to reach, and how do we actually reach them in a way that's engaging and gets them to stay on your website or your web page or your landing page long enough to desire to make an action. Those are the kind of strategies I focus on.
Attention, interest, desire, and action. That's what I
Yeah.
heard in my marketing class.
Yes, that is correct. With a little bit of PR.
Stages. Yeah. And so the reason why I'm talking more about these types of things is because those are creative things in a different way. It's sort of like you were trying to manage and help other people be creative in a way, right? Because if you're taking people that are good at something and there's an axiom that says you get promoted until you become incompetent, you're trying to like give people competency as they're getting promoted, which is interesting because that a lot of companies could use it. The church could use that strategy, right? Because they put people in positions where they're incompetent because they're sort of trying them out. And, we have you can be president of deacons and then teachers and priests, and you can learn a little bit about leadership, but it's not until you become elders quorum president or bishop where you have the eye of the church to see if you can do more things higher up, like 70 or local area presidency or mission president or something like that. Yeah. I know that John DeLynn helped write a program where the church would keep track of everyone, of like all the bishops and up, to see, like, I don't know, some sort of metrics to see if they were doing a good job, to see if they were positioned to be promoted in a way.
Right.
And so
my management philosophy is, if you're not replaceable, if someone under you can't take your place, then you're not promotable. And I actually got that from watching the LDS Church promote people based on irrelevant things. And how the LDS Church is big enough that their saving grace is that if you put this person in position, it's going to be okay, because if they can't do it, this other person's going to slide in and help them and do it for them. In business, you can't do that. You have to take that person and put them there and have them train this person so that eventually they can move up together.
Right.
So I think the LDS Church would probably be growing leaps and bounds if they were better situated to train the people to actually help the people they're supposed to be helping and serve them to a greater capacity. And as a part of that service, find the new leaders and train them. It's more than just the Lord telling someone to do something. When Moses got his call, the Lord didn't just pick somebody who was a shepherd. He picked someone who had been living in the king's court, who had been trained in military, who'd been trained in leadership. And
trained in building pyramids and cities, like I saw in the movie with Charlton Heston as Moses.
Maybe not pyramids, but the Lord trains people up when he calls them. And so in my mind, if you're a church, you should follow the Lord's example in the scriptures and train them up as well. So there's my little soapbox for that.
I just want to ask you a question. When you read the scriptures, starting at a young age, was there ever a point that you felt like God was telling you that what you were reading was the truth?
Yes. So I am a very, very spiritual person, and I had very, very spiritual experiences as a kid. And so that's why I'm just going to go ahead and get into it and tell you exactly what happened. I was reading the scriptures. The stories were nice, but they were just stories. It didn't do much for me. I mean, like you mentioned Dr. Seuss earlier, it was very much like, yeah, this is green eggs and ham, except this guy's going into a desert and this stuff's happening. And sometimes it's bad and sometimes it's good. So I really couldn't figure out how this was going to prove that God was real or not real. And there was this one evening, it was like a Wednesday night, or it was Saturday. I'm sorry, it was a Saturday night. And we had gone to a church open house that the missionaries had thrown to try to encourage people from around, to come into the building and find out who these people were. What's this church about? And I'm like, man, we're going to church on the weeknights. We're going to church twice on Saturday or Sunday. Now we're going Saturday night. I was like, I've got to get to the bottom of this. And so I knelt down right there in the pew and I said a prayer to the Lord. I said, God, I don't know what's going on here, but if you're real, then you can tell me that you're real. Because if Joseph Smith saw God as a 12-year-old kid, and I know I'm only 5 or 6, I'm like half his age, but he was just a kid and I'm just a kid. So if he saw God, if he saw you, then I can see you. But if I can't see you, he didn't see you either. And I can't really express to you this, but I knew that to be true in my heart. And the only scripture I've ever read that kind of like gives me the same impression as the feeling I had in that moment was the brother of Jared when he saw the finger of God. Like you just know, like I know this. And when I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the church building anymore. I was in a vision, and in my vision, I saw. And this was a very long time ago. I presume it was the Lord. It may have been an angel. And I said, are you real? Not knowing who the person was. Are you real? Did Joseph Smith really see Jesus Christ? And he kind of motioned like this. And I looked over and I saw Joseph Smith in the grove praying. I saw him wrestling. I saw angels all over the place. I saw the Father and the Son. And I saw his first vision. Now, I don't know exactly what happened in the first vision. I will say that what I saw was not like the movies that the LDS Church played back in the 70s, because there were angels all over the place. I would say that if you were to take the different stories that are out, that I'm aware of now as an adult, of the first vision, they're all true, because they're all describing the same thing from a different perspective, and based on what I saw in the vision that I had. And so at that point, I
sort of like the men trying to describe the elephant, right? The
Yes.
blind men trying to describe the elephant. They all, if you just took one of their points of view, you would have just a limited aspect
Yes.
of what the elephant is. But if you took them all together, then you might have a better view of it.
Yes, exactly. Now I will say that the one description that someone wrote down where he only saw Jesus, and that happened when he was 15. That one only fits if you completely ignore everything else. And so I do wonder if that was a different vision that happened maybe a year later. And I actually published a book called The Book of Avar, where that's exactly what I did, because that didn't fit with my understanding. I threw it in as another chapter. It's like the next year this thing happened, because most of them say it happened when he was 12 or 14, and the other one seems to have happened a year later. I apologize if I get the ages wrong. I'm doing this off the cuff.
That's okay. It sounds to me like, according to what you saw, that you would probably still believe that Joseph Smith did, in fact, see God the Father and Jesus Christ.
Yes. Yes, I do believe that. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that I discount the idea of Trinitarianism, because in Trinitarianism, they can be the same person and still stand next to each other. So
Yeah.
I don't have a definitive belief in that one theology of God is correct. I believe God introduces him or herself to us in a way that we can relate to.
Gotcha. And so, forgive me for not knowing this, but are you still an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
No, my family left in November 2015. We felt called to start the Fellowship of Christ, which is a unity movement. I was excommunicated in January of the following year for leaving the LDS Church and not coming back.
Like starting your own.
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much. I didn't really start a church. It's called the Church of Jesus Christ and Christian Fellowship. But as I try to explain to people, and that came from Revelation, the church is us, not the organization. The fellowship, it's us as each individual is the church. And then as Christians, we fellowship together in Christ. So I always call it the fellowship, not the church. And people in the fellowship, they may be LDS, they may be RLDS, they may be Strangites, they may be whatever. They may be non-denominational, which is what I consider myself to be. Because the whole thing is about finding the things that we have in common rather than pushing a particular theology or dogma.
Right. That reminds me of Cody and Leah Young got excommunicated for basically the same thing. Leah was trying to help a friend through her friend's faith crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And she thought, I'm going to prove everything right for you and figure out this stuff out. And she found out that there were plenty of things to wonder about the validity of the Brighamites, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
But she still wanted to be a member, but she just knew that church history and other things were kind of difficult to figure out because we hadn't been given the whole truth, right?
Right.
And so she started a Facebook group with other people that had questions, and so they could talk it over and not feel crazy, right? It's almost like the church says, in order to get to heaven, you have to believe and testify that the sky is orange.
Right.
And it's like, well, why would I have to do that? Well, don't just trust us. We're going to tell you a story, and you have to testify to that exact story. And if you deviate, then you're in trouble. And so she didn't feel. So that creates a situation where if you say, "Hey, the sky looks blue to me, and it looks blue to most everybody in the world," am I crazy for not believing what my family believes about the sky being orange, or that my leaders did? And so it doesn't allow for extra learning, right? Somebody once said to me, if you believe the exact same things at 40 that you did at 20, you haven't grown. And so you, I know, explored different religions, and you kind of have a more broad experience with God, we'll say, and you believe that there's lots of good in lots of religions. I mean, Joseph Smith said that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so the Cody and Leah Young situations, they get excommunicated for starting a Facebook group or a meetup group where people can just talk about differences.
That's one of those things. When I was, I always joke that back when I was LDS, they punished me for not serving a 2-year mission by making me a forever stake or ward missionary. And the thing that always drove me crazy about it is I would talk to people and they would say, "What about this?" And I'd be like, "What about it? They lied." I'm like, "Right. But if they would have told you the truth, would you have cared?" And they're like, "Well, probably not. But the problem is they lied." And it's like, well, yeah, you're right. The problem is that they lied. But they're a business. They're a corporation. They're trying to protect the interest of their corporation and of their business. That doesn't mean that God isn't real. It doesn't mean that Joseph Smith wasn't a prophet. How many people love the book of Psalms? And yet no one wants to remove it from the Bible because King David, who supposedly wrote all of those Psalms, murdered a dude so he could get his wife. You know, like no one's canceling that. We all love the Torah, but we wouldn't have the Torah if Moses wouldn't have murdered a guy for an Egyptian for whipping an Israelite.
There you go.
So this idea that men have to be perfect, a church has to be perfect, or a system has to be perfect is a failure because it never can be. None of those ever can be. And once you just embrace that, people they stop caring as much. They're like, "Oh yeah, it's not perfect and neither am I." And that's life.
And so I know that you have podcasts, and we talked about Evan Sharley, and that you did describe what that was that you did for Evan.
So I have several different things that I do in trying to unite the Latter-day Saints and Christianity in general, and the Abrahamic faith in general. And then beyond that, just anyone who believes that there's something else besides us. Back when Notebook, was it Notebook LM or NT, when that thing first came out, Evan actually, she sent me this little clip and I was like, this is amazing. And I've been trying for quite some time. In the Latter-day Saint movement, there are so many scriptures out there. People think it's just the Book of Mormon and the Bible and the Doctrine and Covenants, and if you're LDS, the Pearl of Great Price. I have got an entire website. The fellowship puts together, I shouldn't say, it's not just me, other people have helped put it together. It's called openscriptures.net. And there's all these different scriptures from Judaism, Christianity, and the Latter-day Saint movement, expansions of the Book of Mormon, translations of like actual ancient records like the Nag Hammadi Library and the Dead Sea Scrolls.
The Bhagavad Gita?
That's not on there yet.
Okay.
So
You're
in
working
order
on
to
it.
be on Open Scriptures, I have to have found someone that's tied to the Latter-day Saint movement that's using it. So, for example, A Course in Miracles and the Urantia book, there's like a New Age section there because there's a New Age branch of the Latter-day Saint movement. There's people, I've met some people who are into those books. I'm like, okay, well, then they go in here. Same with Gnostics. I'm into Kabbalah, so the Kabbalah books are there. So as long as there's someone with some sort of tie up to the Latter-day Saint movement, they end up in this library.
And Evan wrote her own book.
Correct. Yes, the Book of Lavens. Very, very interesting book. So what I did was I would pump these through Google's little chatbot there. And to be honest, at first it was pretty awful. I started off with the Book of the Law of the Lord that James Strang translated, and it was bad. The woman's like, "Can you believe this?" And she's actually like laughing at how this is ridiculous. Like, he's saying the Catholics are wrong. Like, that can't be right. I'm like, "Are you a Catholic robot?" So what I ended up doing was I would run that like 10, 20 times, and I would go through and I would be like, okay, this is good. This is not, this is good. And I would end up putting it all together.
And so as you're rerunning, you're adding more prompts to try to.
Yes. At first, I think when I first started doing it, you couldn't add prompts, but once you could, I would start doing that, or at least once I learned how to.
Right.
But yeah, I would do that, and I would try to make it a bit more entertaining. But the purpose wasn't to convert anybody. And these are robots talking to each other. The purpose wasn't to convert people to any of these books. It's just to raise awareness that they're there, that they exist. And in my mind, because I am a religious person, I know that there's too many books out there for any one person to study all of them. But if the Lord leads somebody to one of them and they feel God in them, then please study that book. It doesn't mean you to go and join whatever church, but that's a deeper connection in your personal relationship with the divine. And that to me is what the gospel of Jesus Christ is really all about.
And so you were able to sort of fine tune it enough to get Evan's book done as a podcast?
Hers was actually one of the easier ones to make. I actually had to cut it down because I had to cut it down to I think it was an hour, because the AI was just fascinated with this thing. And I guess it did get part of it backwards. Everything in it isn't perfect. And I am not an expert in any of these books. So I when I put it together, I'm doing my best as someone who hasn't read it. And what I really love to see is the people who do have a testimony of these books. I would love to see them go into the comments and correct the AI's mistakes and be there to field questions for people who want to learn more about these books.
So we'll provide a link to the thing that you did for Evan.
Mm-hmm.
And what other projects are you involved in or around the same thing, or other things that you want to tell us about?
Around that project, I will tell you that there are three aspects of it. The first is the openscriptures.net, and that breaks down. If there's a free PDF available, it's on there. And so if you're watching this and you know of a PDF that's not on there, please get it to me. But then a lot of these groups are smaller, and so they can't put together their own scripture app like the LDS Church has. And so we partnered with some of these smaller organizations on a website called sacredrecords.org. And so, for example, if you go to sacredrecords.org, I believe it's like /fellowship, then that's for the fellowship's collection, if you will, of scriptures. But then we also did it for Matthew Gill's group. We've done it for a group out in Oregon of Gnostic Mormons, and a recent brother by the name of Leahy. You can go, you have your own independent little website within this website where it's your library, and you can go and just click, I want this book, I want this chapter, go down to the verse, and you can read the scriptures. It's very, very convenient, very well set up. And as people are asking us to add to it, we're constantly evolving and growing. We actually have a brother who's putting it together, and I think he's working with one other person, and I'm helping by giving advice, but yeah, the ultimate goal is to create an open source software program that will allow for book publishing, both as PDFs that you can take to printers like Lulu, and also so you can have this web app that eventually will be in app stores. So you can go and just download the app, and it's this church's app or this group's app with their scriptures.
So we might be able to ask AI, like, how many different denominations are there within the LDS? Or
no, you can't. It won't know. Stephen L. Shields wrote a book. It's multi-volume now. That's the guy you want to go to if you want to know.
That's the main thing. Yeah, the AI would have to be aware of that, right?
Yeah.
And so but you are somebody
that's the AI.
You are somebody that's actually maybe working with a lot of these. And how many are you working with right now?
So I'm not working with as many as I would like to. The biggest problem within the Latter-day Saint movement is that once you start doing something, everyone thinks you're trying to usurp power from them. I do not have any interest in any of that. I don't really. I mean,
you're trying to magnify their power.
Yeah. What I want to do is I want people to know that when you leave whatever church you're in, if you're a member of Community of Christ, let's say, and you're like, oh, you know what, I'm done with this. I still believe in God. Where else can I go? It's not a mystery. You can go to the LDS Church. You can become a stranglehead. They're small enough that they know there's other groups. They're also headquartered in Missouri, where there's a lot of different branches of the Restoration. Whereas out in Utah, there's branches, but they're mostly Brighamite. So if you're in the LDS Church, you're raised to believe this lie, to be perfectly blunt, that they're the only people that use the Book of Mormon. There's over 200 churches that use the Book of Mormon. Before I found out about all this, back when I was younger, I met Baptists who loved the Book of Mormon. They didn't talk about it in church, but they thought it was a great book. I was like, well, why don't you join? They're like, oh, because I think your church is nonsense, but I love the Book of Mormon. So I want to make sure that when people say, I want to leave this church for whatever reason, they don't have to make excuses for the miraculous things that have happened in their life and suddenly become an atheist. God is still real just because you want to move away from a church. No church owns God. And so the ultimate goal in all of this is you can still be with Christ. You can still be a covenant holder. You can still believe in something. And here's some options to help you with that. At the same time, the other thing I want to do is, I think the great failing of the Latter-day Saints, the Latter-day Saint movement, the reason why we don't grow the way Protestants do, the way the Catholic Church has, and the reason why the churches are shrinking right now is because we're so busy fighting amongst each other for dominance that we don't really get the work of the Lord done. So I'm hoping that the people will say, I don't really believe in this record, but I can see you guys are doing some good things. What are some good things we can do together to move the Christian message forward and stop worrying about which church, or even if people join a church at all? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Stop saying my Jesus is better than your Jesus.
Yes. Yeah. My Jesus can beat up your Jesus. Yeah.
So David, did you get rebaptized into the LDS Church?
I was baptized for the first time into the LDS Church when I was a kid. Since leaving the LDS Church, my wife, she's a high priestess. She rebaptized me. And then in the spring of this year, we did baptisms. And one of the apostles in the fellowship, we baptized each other. I baptized everybody to send them forth. And then he baptized me to send me forth.
Gotcha. Okay.
I like to encourage the baptismal ordinance as often as people feel moved by the Spirit to receive it. I mean, not daily, obviously, but I also believe in more of what in Joseph Smith's church, they did baptisms to send people forth for healing and for like a variety of, it wasn't just, hey, you're baptized, you're not a member of our church, we're done. Emma Smith got sick and got baptized like 4 or 5 times one time.
Yeah, but at some point, the corporation decided to streamline that.
Yeah, I believe it. So when Brigham Young started his new church, he organized in 1847. Then they legally organized in 1851. And then from 52 through either 53 or 54, he had everybody baptized into his church, and then they cut it off. That was it. No more baptisms, if I remember my history correctly.
Yeah, that's something we don't get in every 4 years in the Brighamite branch of church history.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that Brigham actually started his own church by doing the things that he did. And because everybody that's not everyone, like you don't, everybody, a lot try to claim authority based on a certain person in the early days of the church. And then because of that, because Joseph changed the scriptures, we're only going to go with David
Whitmer,
right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, go ahead, Randy.
Is there a financial support system within the church?
Within the fellowship? We take donations. Yeah. It's kind of been interesting. So originally I paid for everything. My wife and I paid for everything. And then at one point the Lord said, knock it off. You've got to start asking people for money. Stop doing this. And I was like, okay, then it's in your hands. If no money shows up, all this is done. And someone sent us like $1,000. And so we don't go out actively asking for money. We do have a page that says if you like donations, and we are probably going to start raising money because we want to start doing more things to meet offline in person, and there is a cost to that. And so we want to be able to finance that. We want the saints to be able to meet together in a way that isn't competitive. That's specifically to learn to love each other.
Right.
And so we have people that donate regularly, and then every now and then someone just gives us money. At one point we needed I think it was like $1,000 or $2,000 or something like that. And we prayed as a leadership group. And the very next day someone said, I don't know who you are. I've never heard of you at all, but the Lord told me to give you $2,000. Wow. And not to pay my tithing to the church this week.
See, the Brighamites would say if that happened, that would prove the Brighamite church is true.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And you're just saying it just proves that God exists.
Yes, I'm just saying it proves that God keeps his promises. Yes. And it's not like he gave us so much money that we're like swimming in wealth or anything, but they gave us what we needed for that specific thing we were trying to do, and then a little bit of a buffer zone that we ended up needing to make sure that thing got done. So
your fellowship, David, and I'm just trying to paint a clear picture in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Is it comprised? Are several of your those who follow this fellowship, are they members of the LDS Church?
A good number of them are either members or ex-members. And I will say,
Gotcha.
So we've got like 3,000 people that signed up for active membership.
Wow.
But we have like maybe 15 regulars. So that show up to things. I think a lot of people, I was actually on Facebook a while back, and someone said, what church do you belong to? And I just put, I'm a non-denominational Mormon Kabbalist. I didn't mention the fellowship at all. And like a couple of weeks later, I got this little notification. I was like, hey, someone else said something in here. I was like, oh, I wonder what's on here. And I went back, and there were like 10 people like, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ and Christian Fellowship. I'm like, really? I have no idea who you are, but welcome. So I think people like being able to say, I belong to a group. And a number of people I've talked to over the years have said they have what I call spiritual PTSD. They've been hurt by whatever church it is. It isn't always the LDS Church, but they've been hurt by whatever church. And so they want to feel like they belong to something, but they're not ready to get involved. And so that's, to me, really the other creative things I do. There's a brother in England two brothers in England, I'm sorry, Michael and Kyle, who do a sacrament service every Sunday, and we put it up on YouTube. So I edit that. I add a message. It's normally me, but it can be anyone who wants to do a message. Sometimes I do a meditation. And so that's a sacrament service. There's a sister in Utah who does a live service on Sundays that not everybody can get to. So by them doing this, those that can't worship with others or don't want to have the ability to take the sacrament. So that the other creative side is the stuff I do for the fellowship, and a lot of that is basically trying to meet the needs of the people. Whatever need someone tells me, look, if I get enough people telling me, or I feel inspired by the Lord to do something, then we have a YouTube channel and we put stuff out that way.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, are you aware of Britt Hartley and her book and podcast that she does, No Nonsense Spirituality?
I have heard of it, but I'm not as familiar with it as I would like to be. It's on my radar of things I need to check out.
It's sort of like doing what you're doing, but with less woo, as she calls it, and more maybe science or whatever behind it. But she believes in spirituality, but she doesn't believe in organized religion.
Okay.
And she wants to do it from a more rational point of view, right?
Okay.
But she thinks that, evolutionarily positive rights have been passed on through generations, and those things have been important to keep our genes alive. And she doesn't, ascribe to the nihilism where, nothing really matters. She wants to there still can be meaning in our lives, right? And so it's kind of the same kind of work. Also, Joe Rollins does the Church of Korihor. Have you heard of that ever?
I have. Yes, I have heard of that. I've actually spoken to him. Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting perspective.
Yeah. So how could we have a fellowship of atheists?
Yes.
is what he wants. Because community, fellowship, rights, those are all things that historically have been involved within the human population. And so
I do think there's a place for, I generally associate atheists who want to get together as humanists. And I know there's a number of Latter-day Saints who left the LDS Church and have started something new, and it's basically a humanist version of the Latter-day Saint movement somehow. I find it very intriguing. I am very esoteric. And so
would you say that the transhumanist is part of that?
Yes. I probably would. Yeah.
All right.
So the one failing, if you will, of the fellowship is our main focus really, as far as an organization in trying to get people to work together, is the School of the Prophets. And literally the idea is we don't believe in, when I say we, I mean, generally people who seem attracted to what we're doing, we generally don't believe in the idea that we're supposed to follow a prophet. We generally believe that there are prophets. Nelson's an apostle who, that's a type of prophet. Stacy, I can't remember her last name, but Community of Christ, name escapes me right now. Their current prophetess, president. I'm sorry. Did you say her name?
I don't remember her name, but yes, they have a new female president.
Yeah. So she's a prophetess. She has the keys. And there's no reason why they can't both be. I believe, and what I encourage people is we as Latter-day Saints and as Christians and as religious people in general, I believe the Lord wants us to be a prophetic people, not a people that follow a prophet. And so really, in my mind, the role of prophetic leadership is to facilitate the prophetic people that the Lord has given them stewardship with, not over.
Yeah.
So
Stacy Cram.
Thank you. Yes.
Cram. Yeah.
Okay. I almost said Graham. So yeah, it's Cram. Glad I didn't say that. Yeah. So it's really a lot for me and for the fellowship, having a personal relationship with God. And then if you have a perspective, I'm pointing at you, Randy, on my screen, and Gene, you have a perspective. And then, and you guys, the three of us may believe completely different things, but when we all come together to find the things we have in common and rationally discuss the things that we don't agree on, I promise you that all three of us are going to walk away with a deeper perspective of our own beliefs, having explored one another's.
Oh, interesting. Sure. That makes sense.
Well, I think it's fascinating, David, what you're doing. We, like I say, honor creators. And to me, what you're doing is really creative.
Okay.
And we're glad to have you on the show. And if there's anything else that, you'd like to tell our audience, we'll wrap up soon.
Okay. I'm generally better at asking questions. And when you say, is there anything else? My immediate response is yes, everything else.
Everything else.
I will say that if anybody out there is looking to explore ideas within Christianity, Judaism, and even Islam to a certain extent, in an open and safe environment, we have online meetings nearly, I think it's every night except for Friday and Saturday, that anyone is welcome to attend and just come and be themselves. It's okay to say whatever you believe, and it doesn't matter how crazy it is, because every religious belief is crazy if you think about it too much.
That's right. So you're basically saying, just like somebody'd say, okay, everybody, it's time for questions. And remember, there's no stupid questions. You're basically saying there's no stupid religions.
Yes, pretty much.
Or beliefs.
Yes, pretty much.
Let's share and grow from the sharing.
Exactly. And if you're an atheist that just likes the idea of the Christ in the Bible, as a philosopher, that's fine too.
Right.
So,
would you consider it to be a support group then?
Sometimes and in some ways, we actually have had support groups. Right now, the people that are showing up are it is a support group in the sense that we're all supporting one another and learning, but it's just really fascinating, the life experiences and the differences. And so I think if somebody new comes aboard, it may be a support group for them, but the people who are kind of coming pretty consistently now, they've really grown to a point to where this has become more of a, almost a family, if you will, because we can be so open with each other. We don't have to fear reprisal or judgment.
It's almost like a mutual improvement association.
Yes. Yes.
That rings a bell of familiarity there.
It does.
So David, remind me where you're located.
I'm in Ohio.
And the groups, as you get together, is it a virtual type thing like
yes,
like we're doing here?
Yeah. So we meet in person. We're trying to meet 3 times a year. We meet in Georgia in the spring. We meet in Missouri in the fall. We're hoping to start next year meeting in Michigan in the summer. But all the rest of our stuff is online. We have people all over the world. At times we've had people from Australia. They'll get up early in the morning to come to our evening meetings here in the U.S. We've had people from Africa, Europe. So you get an interesting mix. The more you come, the more interesting it gets.
Yeah. And so David's going to send me a bunch of links. I will try to provide them in the description down below. Click on the more after you see the title, and you can start clicking away. Rand, did you have any final words?
Just wanted to reiterate how interesting it is to explore the different ideas of people. David, you've committed, apparently, and obviously you've committed your life to this, and that's very admirable. And I wish you the best.
Thank you.
I'd love to pop in and check it out.
Okay.
I was with David as a 5-year-old. I've committed my life to ice cream.
Well, we can
I know that
for sure.
Brothers in ice cream. That's for sure. Thanks everybody for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Do the things and have a great rest of 2025. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.